Well, good morning to everybody. Danni.
Hi, everybody.
Danni is joining us from a different location today. So thank you for being here with us. Announcements. November 18th, free webinar, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. That's Tuesday, same time as the Distance Reiki Share. It's going to be about shamanic and Reiki journey practices, how they intersect, how they differ. We're going to be learning how to do an introduction to journeying. So those kind of basic tools and techniques, as well as a journey that day. So it's going to be about 3.5 hours. There's going to be a lot of information in there, lots of tools and techniques. We would love it if you joined us. It is free. You can register and receive the recording after. So if you can't stay for the whole thing, or you can't be there that day because of work or whatever, then you can register, and everybody who registers, whether you're there or not, will receive the recording. So that is Tuesday, November 18th at 9:30 a.m. Pacific. Also, we time changed this week. I forgot to say that on the recording last week. So we went back an hour. So if you're planning to join us next week or weeks after, just know that it might be a different time in your country, or if your state doesn't time change than what it usually is. So just note that as well. I apologize that I did not state that last week. So usually the week after, we have people either join early or come late because the time can be a little confusing with that. And then the week after, what is that? November 25th? Yeah. November 25th, we are going to have our annual gratitude ceremony. That is also going to be during the Distance Reiki Share. And that's going to just be kind of like how we always do it, where we do it live during the Distance Reiki Share, but then we post the recording on Thursday on our YouTube channel. So that's always a really fun and beautiful thing to do. And so, yeah, November 25th, that is just normally at 9:30 a.m. It does usually go a little long. So it's usually, instead of an hour and a half, it's usually about 2 hours, just so you all know. We have classes coming up: Animal Reiki 1 and 2, November 22nd and 23rd, and Human Reiki 1 and 2, December, is that 2nd and 3rd, Danni? You usually probably have stuff in front of you and you don't today. So let me look. December 1st and 2nd. And then also the other wonderful thing that we have coming up is November 18th, our Next Step Reiki and Explore the 12 Heavens registration opens. So it will be the same as usual, where we have a period of early bird. We're going to send more out about this, where you get an early bird gift. But registration will be open until January 18th. These are our year-long courses, and we only open registration once a year. So if you're interested in learning more tools and techniques, more skills, journeying with Reiki, exploration with Explore the 12 Heavens, we always have so much information about that on our website. We also did an entire podcast about it. And it's for those of you that are looking to develop your intuitive skills, looking to learn how to Reiki journey, those shamanic skills that we talk about. This course is blended with shamanic skills and Reiki energy. And we meet once a month for 12 months, and sometimes twice a month if it's our month quarterly Q&A, but those sessions are more like group mentorship as well. So if you have any questions about that, you can email us, info, or Colleen or Robyn or Danni at reikilifestyle.com. Again, that registration opens November 18th. Early bird goes until December 14th, but registration stays open until January 18th. I told you I would get that date nailed down in my mind. January 18th. And there's a lot of different things that you can do. Like there's payment plans, there's a discount for paying in full, things like that. So again, go to reikilifestyle.com, the Reiki Lifestyle Academy, to learn more about that in each of the classes. Let's go ahead and get started with today. I'm excited about today. Not only do I like this topic, but we're going to do the guided journey a little bit different today. So let's hope that goes well, because what we're talking about today are divination tools that people use in their Reiki practice. So we talk about in our practice oracle cards quite often. That people might work with oracle cards or tarot cards. So you might hear those terms quite often. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about divination tools. So we're going to talk a lot, or we're going to talk about the different kinds, and how you might use them. Obviously, it's going to be an overview of each one. I can't go into depth with each one, but I'm excited to talk about this because it's something that is very integrated within my practice, within Colleen's practice, within Danni's practice. She does a lot of really neat things with her pendulum and her sessions and stuff. And then in our guided meditation journey today, we're actually going to do some oracle cards. So I know people do this on YouTube and they're very good at it. And they're doing it all the time. I don't do this live on camera very often, so mine might be a little clunkier, but that's okay. I'm still excited because it's going to be fun and it's something a little different. So I'll talk about that as well when we get started with our guided meditation slash journey. It's kind of in between on this one. So I've got myself all set up for that. I've been giving Reiki to my oracle card decks. I cleared them, all of that. So anyways, I'm just excited because it's something a little fun, something a little bit different. So one of the things that I want to also say, obviously, with all of these things, with the spiritual buzzword topics that we've been talking about for the last 4 weeks, these are things that you can do with your Reiki practice. They're not things that you have to do with your Reiki practice, but they're also things that a lot of Reiki people talk about. Once you're in the Reiki sphere, you might end up in other spiritual spheres. And so you'll hear a lot about these tools that people use to help guide their practice. Sometimes it is for guidance. Sometimes it's to validate maybe some intuitive impression or intuitive insight that they have received. Sometimes they use them in sessions. Again, Reiki works on its own. Reiki, you don't have to be interested in any of these things, or maybe you're interested, but you haven't learned how to use them in order to have a very beautiful, effective, and successful Reiki practice, whether professional or just personal. But because we talk about them, because they're talked about, because people use them, again, that's the thing with all of these spiritual buzzwords. It's helpful to just know a little bit more about them, how they work with Reiki, and also how we use them as practitioners, because most of the things that we've talked about, we do use in our personal lives, especially in our practice, our personal practices. But then also as practitioners, I certainly will use these tools from time to time. So when you say divination, many people think that it is a way to kind of psychically maybe tell the future when we hear about that, because there are practices that include that aspect of divination tools. So it absolutely can be that style of practice. But actually, divination means to be inspired by the divine. So it can be ways to listen rather than be predictive. I know for me, that is certainly the way that I use my divination tools, my additional friends, I would call them, especially my oracle cards, to help support my practice. Maybe if I do need inspiration from the divine, I'll pull a card, or a message about some of the intuitive practices that I have, I'll pull a card or use my pendulum. Now, cards and pendulums aren't the only things with divination. There's lots of different tools that people use for them. Again, it's to be inspired by the divine. To me, it's another way of listening to the divine. We do that with Reiki energy, right? It's an enlightened energy. It's a divine energy. So we are listening to it and being inspired by it at all times, anytime that we are running Reiki or listening to Reiki in our own way. And then also there are people that have practices that they are a way to maybe not predict the future, but look at all of the different things on the future, about your choices that you might be making in this moment. I know when we're talking about like tarot cards, for me, I might use my tarot cards to ask a question and receive guidance that is a bit more structured, is a bit more linear of like, well, here are all of the possible outcomes if you are going to make choice A or choice B. So you can use them in that way. People might use runes for more of how we think about with divination, where they have a more linear viewpoint of a predicted type future of the things that could happen if you make choice A or choice B. So there's both things that you can do, and people definitely train in these skills, become skilled in these tools and techniques in order to have that sort of practice. Now, you don't have to, and not everybody does, even if you work with a lot of these different tools and techniques. It can be both. And certain times it can be more of that aspect of, well, here's the things that might come to be if you make this choice. And then other times it's more of just, again, that listening to the divine, which is also listening to ourselves, listening to those messages. So I'm going to go in a little bit of a more linear way of what the different divination tools can be, what the different things that people use in their practices, and so that we can kind of know the differences between the two. I would say one of the most common things that people use, maybe in a very, you can be like a card reader, and then other people might just have their oracle cards for guidance when they need it, or they might pull a card for their day or pull a card for a session or something like that. We have our oracle cards and our tarot cards. So the differences in between is that the tarot cards have a bit more of a structured symbolic system, right? They have the major arcana, which are those archetypes. So that is the Fool, the Tower card, the Empress. There's a lot of different archetypes within life that are within the major arcana. Then you have the minor arcana, which is more of maybe your daily experiences. The tarot's telling the story through patterns and symbolism. So the minor arcana are the swords, the pentacles, the wands, the cups. I think I'm getting them all. I use tarot for my own personal practice. I am not an expert in tarot. And in fact, today, when we are going to be doing an oracle card draw during the journey, I purposely won't use tarot because I don't feel like I am an expert in enough in them to be able to do them for other people. But that is a very like deep dive of a practice that you can do of being a tarot reader that people do for years and years and years and become very skilled and experts in them, kind of like astrology. They are almost their own kind of science as well. So but I will do that for myself because I feel like that's responsible, where maybe doing it for other people might be a little irresponsible. So your tarot cards, now I have a certain deck. It's a little less traditional. It's called Prisma Visions Tarot. My husband got this for me, and actually I just think it's beautiful. So you can see here, this is the minor arcana. So this is my Ace of Swords card. I like this deck too because it's shiny on the outside. So anyway, so that is the tarot cards. And then you can have your oracle cards, which your oracle cards are, you can do them in very specific readings. And there are certain decks that are aligned for very specific readings as well. So they can absolutely do that. And tarot can be more intuitive, free flowing as well. So it doesn't always have to be the structured reading type thing. It's just, it has this really big possibility where like all the cards are flowing together. So the symbolism on the cards are telling different stories, as well as the essence of what the card is itself. And the same is true with Oracle as well, but they are more flexible, theme based. There's not quite the same set structure. Um, the messages are intuitive from the imagery, but also each card does have meaning with it. And so for me, how I'm using my Oracle cards is I'm using them kind of on like a daily basis, or maybe I use them for a session to pull for somebody in their session, and what they might be working with. I pull an Oracle card for each Reiki class that I teach. So I have one of the decks that I have is the Spirit Animal Oracle cards. And now this one I'll pull for an animal Reiki class, for example. I'll pull a card for that just to give the essence. It's always interesting because usually that animal shows up in the class as well. And here are those cards. So that's kind of the idea of the Oracle cards. There's lots of different kinds of Oracle cards. So there's the animal cards. There are angel cards. There are so many different types of cards and decks that people have, that artists are a part of, that spiritual people create, so that they can have a deck of different kinds of cards. In fact, we had oh gosh, Brett Bevel on our podcast. He created his own Reiki Oracle deck. So there's a lot of people that create different kinds of decks that have their own essence to them, might have guidance for different kinds of questions. Like I have on my desk, I have my tarot. So if I'm making decisions or really need guidance on certain things, that's when I pull out my tarot. When I have something come through that I also need like some more free flowing guidance on, or want the essence, or maybe I'm feeling a certain way and just be like, what am I feeling? How do I navigate this situation? I might pull my Oracle cards out and do a quick draw from them. And with that, I have a shamanic card deck. I have my animal card deck. I have my horse card deck. I have a tree card deck. So there's a lot of different ones and I might pull different ones for different reasons. Now, how these things work with Reiki. First of all, I use them with my Reiki sessions. So if I have done self Reiki or somebody's done a session for me, I'm probably going to also have my cards that are also telling me a story, giving me guidance, or validating something that I'm asking about. So that is one way that you can use them. I am clearing my decks with Reiki. So before each class, for example, I'm clearing my animal deck. Or if it's a human Reiki class, I'm usually doing multiple cards, but I have the shaman deck within there as well. So I clear them with Reiki. I might also use smoke clearing, but most of the time I'm clearing them with Reiki. I'm also imbuing them with Reiki. So I'm holding them in between my hands. I'm placing my intentions into them, or asking my questions into them, and asking them to give me guidance based on this. Now, you've heard Colleen and I talk a lot about our horse deck. So that is this horse deck that has given us guidance through a lot of different events in our life, and especially over the last 5 to 7 years, where we have really had so many changes in our world, that our horse deck has been a really big part of that. You do develop a relationship with them, and like I said before, kind of a friendship. Now, how I described both is not like, oh, it's either or. Tarot's structured, Oracle's not, and vice versa. Like, people use them for different reasons and in those different ways. Um, so that it is definitely interchangeable how I described each one. So just know that. And that's true for all of the divination tools that I'll be talking about today. It's not like, oh, tarot's only this, oracle's only this. People use each for different reasons. And some of the oracle cards come with very specific readings. I know there's some of the angel cards out there that it's like, here is how you lay them out for readings, and that is what they're meant for, kind of more in that style of a tarot reading, because tarot, you can definitely have a lot of different ways that you lay out the cards that give you readings for different questions that you might have. And so, for example, another way that I'm using like Reiki for them is today, as we're going to do a little bit of a reading in the journey, I imbued them with Reiki and I asked that they hold the intention for the whole group here and also those that are listening later. How it came through when I was channeling the Reiki through was a lot more eloquent than how I just said it, but essentially that's what I'm putting into my cards. So I cleared them first. I brought in the Reiki symbols. I imbued them with Reiki energy in between my hands, and then I asked that the Reiki energy support the guided journey for the people today. So that's how I'm working with them for Reiki energy. If I'm doing it for me, I'm going to do the same structure, but I'm going to ask it that it's just for my intentions. And in that case, I might clear it before, because here we're using it with a group that's not me. But if I'm using it for myself, I don't want that group essence necessarily in my own reading. I want my own reading for that. So again, I would clear it, I would imbue it with Reiki, and then ask for my intentions to be a part of the card readings. So I'm going to do that before classes. I'm going to do that with sessions. I'm going to do that in all of the different instances that you might have with your cards. And that's true for if I'm using a pendulum, which I have right here. If I'm going to be using my pendulum, another way to do use a divination tool. So this is the one I'm going to move on to next. Pendulums can look a lot of different ways. It's essentially a weighted tool that you are using to help you to answer questions. So, sorry, my setup today is a little different. So I'm like trying to do, and I know Danny's got a lot of stuff going on this morning too. So it's a weighted tool that moves in response to the energy. So you can use it for yes or no questions. You can use it for chakra balancing, which a lot of people in Reiki do, and you can use it for energy directions as well. So in how many people use pendulums is you start off with like a yes or no question. Is my name Robyn? And I'm going to ask it that question, and I'm going to hold it with my hand being still. And the pendulum is going to start swinging one way or the other. So a yes, just as examples, can be clockwise, and then a no is going to be counterclockwise. And so then you know what the yes and what the no looks like for you in just that session, because sometimes it can switch. Other times, like a back and forth can be an answer. So let's just use it in this example. Because I use clockwise and counterclockwise, a yes or no might be like rephrase the question, or I don't know, something like that. And then like just a standing still, just being still can be another form of an answer of, again, like it doesn't know the answer essentially. So that's the way that you can use a pendulum for your yes or no. And um, Danny, I don't know if you're available to talk about how you use your pendulum. So what Danny does with her pendulum is, are you able to talk about it or no? It's
I
okay.
can. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
it might be a little busy back
Okay.
here. How I do it, and I don't know if you said this already because I was off for a minute, but I use them to go over each chakra. Did you talk about that?
No.
Okay. So how I go before the session, I go over each chakra. And for me, going in circles is a yes, and going back and forth is no. And I go through and it helps me identify. So if it's in your heart space or your shoulders or your overthinking or in your legs and that stability. And and then I do a Reiki session and then I go back through and it's always in alignment. Always every session I've ever had. And I do this in person and in distance. So I can use a doll or a pillow. I have like a little Reiki doll with chakras on it. So I go over her and that's how I use it. I love it. I think it's after the classes that we've taken, the next step classes, I kind of can honor my intuition a little bit more. I have more confidence, but it's really actually kind of fun too, just to see to see how they're all aligned and vibrant. So that's how I use it.
Yes, thank you, Danny. I love that. And that's also, definitely a way that a lot of Reiki practitioners use pendulums in that way, or people that do chakra balancing work, things like that. That is a really great way to also work with your pendulums as well. So yeah, thank you so much. And I know you got a lot going on, so if you need to turn off your video, go for it. So. And the ways that you can work with a pendulum as well is that same thing. You're asking Reiki to come in, clear it, imbue it or charge it with Reiki. You can also attune these things as well. So that's another thing that you can do is attune your cards or attune your pendulums, things like that. So, and there's also a lot of information about all of these kinds of tools and techniques that you can learn from people online, people who use pendulums every single day in their practice. That's why I always have Danny talk about it because she uses her pendulum in all of her sessions. People who are experts in tarot can give you a basic about how to use them. They very commonly come with books that can help you as well. Maybe not pendulums all the time, but they can come with books in your oracle or your tarot or the different tools that you might buy for them that can help you to kind of start with them and get the meaning of the different cards, things like that. It is also an intuitive practice. So just know that, like, I know for me, I have received card decks as gifts, and maybe I'm not as connected to certain card decks as I am other ones. Maybe I'm drawn to them in a metaphysical store, or I hear about it and I'm like, ooh, that one is really intriguing me. And so I might pick up that deck and then get to know it as a deck because all of these things are also a part of our intuitive practices. As well. And the same is true with pendulums. Like maybe you're in a metaphysical store or you see another Reiki practitioner or a colleague or a jewelry maker on social media that is giving pictures of their pendulums that they make. And you're like, oh, that's really beautiful. I feel connected or drawn to that. And so even if you're not, an expert in them, that connection can tell you that maybe this is something that you want to have within your practice or within your life. That's that little bit of that, intuitive aspect of yourself drawn to that, speaking to you, and Reiki energy speaking to you as well. And lots of Reiki masters make like pendulums, make these things. So that's the other neat thing about it is they might be running Reiki when they are making these different whether they're pendulums or whether they're card decks or things like that. So then we have things like runes. I am not super familiar with runes. I know a lot of people that use them. They many times, well, how they are traditionally thought about, although they can come again in many different forms, is that they have like the ancient symbols on them, right? And they're carrying energetic meanings. So let's say like maybe dice that have symbols on them that have energetic meanings, or maybe even literal meanings. And you toss the runes and they're going to give you a reading on them. And same thing where they might represent an archetype or a vibration, maybe like protection or new beginnings type thing. And then you're going to read the runes. I wouldn't call these runes, but in a similar fashion, I have what are called astro dice, and astro dice have the astrological symbols on them. And there's 3 of them, and I might, throw those. And if I'm asking a question, reading the answer that it gives to me. And those are a little bit different because they are more from the astrological standpoint, where runes have a very, usually, not always, again, none of this is all set in stone, no pun intended, but runes have more of a earth-based practice typically, but not always. So that's another way that you can use a divination tool. Can be really fun. Again, you can be trained as an expert in runes. And use them really as a part of your practice on a daily basis. Now, if you also think about runes, it's another thing that's very easy to hold in your hands. So if you're talking about combining it with Reiki, charging it with Reiki, feeling the energy, not just memorizing the meanings, but also like the essence of them. However, when we first start out, it is very helpful to have the meanings of them, because we have to also learn about these things. So there's nothing wrong with that. I still use my books for things, but I also feel the essence, the imagery of things as well, because there's always that part of these divination tools. We also have dowsing, using rods is another common divination thing. So if you're new to this, like usually they're copper rods that you're holding in your hands, and they're either going to cross or go far apart or stay in the middle for like the same thing, a yes, a no, or neutral about it. These are common in practices, again, kind of like a pendulum, where you can ask it yes or no questions, but also people commonly use them to find water, ley lines, or if you're talking about on people, places where there might be energetic imbalance, but also energetic power. So it can be both. So that is another divination tool. And then we do have things that are like, these are kind of in a little bit of a different category, but automatic writing, astrology, both of those things can be somewhat considered like you're listening to the divine, right? That is the definition of divination tools. For me, I use astro dice in the same way that I might use like a divination tool. So I'm asking a question. What comes up on the 3 dice is a divination idea about the energetic essence of the question that I'm asking. And then also the way that your transits might be, the cosmic patterns that you might have within yourself, you're listening to the divine. Again, a little bit different, but also not that different. And then with automatic writing, we talk a lot about that in this circle. That is listening to the divine. You are channeling the answers to your questions. You're channeling the energy. You're channeling the subconscious, that intuitive and inner truth aspect of you. So those are also in here as well, but it is a little bit different than, how we think of like oracle cards or pendulums, things like that we are talking about. There's also lots of other types of divination tools. as well. And in the different modalities, you're going to have different types of tools. So in shamanic practices, you might have a different set of tools. In Wiccan practices, you might have a different set of tools. Of course, you can combine these things with Reiki energy, because at the very least, we can activate Reiki energy within ourselves. And that is going to be a part of just listening to that enlightened energy, listening to the divine on another level. But I can't cover all of them because there's a zillion of them. And of course you can learn more about each of them in your own way. I would say the big thing is that sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming to know what every single thing is, to learn about the different things, but really what is, I would say, the most important thing is that you are listening to you with it, as far as what you're drawn to. So are you drawn to a certain deck? Are you drawn to oracle cards, or are you not? That doesn't need to be. Instead, you might be drawn to pendulum work, or you might be drawn to tarot cards, or you might be drawn to, all of these different things that we have when it comes to divination tools. There's not really a right or a wrong. And when you're starting with them, really just go by what you feel called to. Now, there might be different ones that you pick up because, let's say, you're going through a part of your life where, when we're thinking about it with crystals, that you need protection. So you're drawn to, you look up what are good stones for protection. Other times in your life, you are, in a very beautiful piece of your life where you want to empower relationships. So you get, like rose quartz or stones that are a part of that cycle that you're in your life. And the same is true with divination tools. So you can certainly look up things that are helpful for a cycle of your life, or you can just go by your intuitive impressions as well. So all of the above are correct. Activating Reiki can be very helpful in knowing where to go next with it, the essence of it all, and really listening to that inner truth within you as to what you're feeling called to. Also, sometimes I've just picked up a deck because I thought it was pretty, and turns out it's exactly what I needed in that moment. Or what I needed in my practice. Like it was a missing piece of something that I wanted in that cycle of my life. That was kind of the case with these prismatic vision tarot, is that my husband just really thought that they were really cool looking. And it comes with another deck too, that has like holograms, and they came across his algorithm and he's like, ooh, I want to get, so he got them for me for Christmas. And I really like them, and I love the artwork on them, and I feel very connected to them. So that can be true too. That's like not a bad thing with it either. So just so you know that can be a part of the process, and that's okay. There's something in your heart that is calling you towards it, and that's always a good thing. That's an inner truth for you. So I can't cover everything with it, but that is kind of a basic overview with divination tools and some of the really common types that we hear about and that people use in their practices.